Vikings fans? Welcome into another episode of the Skol Hop. I'm Evan.
I'm Austin.
We're just a couple of dudes from Iowa. We like drinking beer, talking about the Vikings.
Yeah, we do. And to get some beer money, our show is sponsored. If you're a avid listener to the podcast, you know our great sponsor is Big Top Ventures. So let's give them a shout out here. Shout out to those guys. If you're looking to take a trip to an all-inclusive in Mexico or Jamaica, go ahead and send them an email. We'll put their email on the screen here. Their email is bigtopventuresllc@gmail.com. Just send them an email. Say, hey, I'm looking to take a trip down to an all-inclusive in Mexico or Jamaica, and they will get back to you with some good prices, and you will be surprised at how good those prices are. So, thanks, Big Top Ventures.
You know what I've learned about Big Top?
What's that?
They're really good at giving gifts.
They really
we got
are.
This nice little sign back here, little neon Skol Hop sign. And even just looking around on our set, there's a few other things that they've gotten for us. So thanks, Big Top.
Yeah.
We appreciate it.
Most notably probably
that one over
your
there.
signed Culpepper jersey.
Oh, yeah. I got you a gift.
What?
I did, yeah. So I went to Wisconsin, which, I know, enemy territory.
Why would you...
But I was there this last weekend for a wedding. So,
okay, all right.
And it was a good friend, so, you got to go.
Okay.
But you know what Wisconsin has, right?
They got some pretty good beer.
They have great beer.
As much as I hate to say it, they are good at a few things. So,
yes.
Scotties, you've got some good beer. So
if you look behind you, I got you some of, I think what you've told me is your favorite beer of all time.
You're too kind.
This might be like...
Oh, my goodness.
This is... We're doing something new here. Like, we've never had a Wisconsin beer ever on screen.
I appreciate the gift. If you are not watching us on YouTube or Spotify, jump on, take a look. You'll have about 5 more seconds if you're only listening to not know what this gift is. Evan got me some Moon Man from New Glarus.
There you go.
And I've said before, Moon Man might be a perfect beer, at least for me. There's nothing to complain about with this beer. Evan, thank you so much. I will not be drinking this on the podcast.
We will not have it on the podcast because that would break our rule of only having Iowa beer. But I couldn't go to Wisconsin without getting you some of that.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
We might have to crack one open post-show. Yeah, we might have to.
Off air. Off camera.
Off the podcast. Because we do love beer. We're beer lovers. And just because we have a personal rule that we only drink Iowa brewed beer on the podcast, we love all kinds of beer from everywhere. So, yeah, we might have to crack one open before the day is done.
For sure. Well, I brought an Iowa beer here, and we're going to continue with our mystery beer series here. Mm-hmm. I realized when I was at the store buying this beer that I think we're out of breweries.
Yeah, we need some help, guys.
So either we need these breweries that don't distribute to get in touch with us so we can get our hands on more great Iowa beer, or we need some new breweries just pop up and start brewing beer in Iowa. But yeah, we're out of breweries, at least for the moment, and what's available to us at our favorite Devil's Glen Hy-Vee.
Yeah. Maybe we just need to talk to those guys at the Devil's Glen Hy-Vee.
We could do that too.
I did hear of this past weekend, of a newer brewery that I don't know how they might have been around forever, but I've never heard of them before. But Field Day Brewing Company in North Liberty area. I've never had anything of theirs.
All right.
They look kind of newer. I don't know anything about them other than I had never heard of them before a couple of days ago. So might have to keep our eyes peeled for some of their beer. That'd be cool.
Field Day Brewing Company.
Yeah.
Sweet. We should get in touch with them.
But I'm going to guess that that's not the brewery that you got this beer from.
This is not a Field Day Brewing Company beer. No, it is a brewery that we've had.
Okay.
Not a beer that we've had.
Okay.
So it's not a double up. We've only doubled up once, I believe, in the history of the show.
Yeah, maybe twice, but definitely just once that I remember.
Yeah. So, yeah, let's pour these up and see what we got and see if you can guess.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention this amazing tinfoil job that we've got here.
You're welcome.
All 4 cans are perfectly tinfoiled, and you didn't even have to use tape like I did last week.
No tape. These were pretty cold, and the condensation, kind of just
sucked it in. All right. Yeah. All right, we'll crack them open. Oh, that was a good open here. All right, I will try not to
spill everywhere. We do have paper towels. We're prepared if we need it. good old Austin hard pour. Holy cow.
Yeah.
That's like 90%
No,
foam.
we'll be all right. You got to do the hard pour. It's on purpose, is what I will tell everybody.
All right. While your beer is settling, I'll put it up to the camera here, and I'll describe for those that are listening. I haven't had this before, so this is new to me. It's hard to see through, so it's definitely hazy.
Yeah.
It's similar to last week.
I was going to say this.
It's got
kind of looks like last week.
Got kind of an ambery color.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know. What are you getting?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good visual description. It's not as hazy as last week's. You couldn't see through last week's at all, but right now holding it up, it's pretty dark, but I can see the lights through it. It does have, I did a hard pour, but it's got some nice foam. It foamed up pretty good. The aroma's good. It's, I don't know. It smells like a lighter beer than it looks like. So that's all I'll guess before I taste it. But yeah, if you think you know what this looks or what it is just based off the color so far, give us a comment, let us know. But let's try this out and see what we think.
Skol.
Skol.
That's good. You know what this reminds me of? It's not an Iowa beer.
What it reminds you of?
Yeah. A fat tire. It reminds me of a New Belgium fat tire.
Okay. I could see that.
You get that from this?
Yeah. So it's the only word I can think of right now. It's kind of tangy. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah.
It's definitely got some hops to it.
Yeah. It's hoppy, tangy.
Yeah.
It's good though. I like it.
It's not really citrusy, so I don't really know, man. I'm just gonna make my first guess. Remember, we try to guess the type, the ABV, and the brewery. So I'm gonna make my first guess. Just gonna umbrella guess here. Is it an IPA?
It's close to an IPA, but it is not an IPA.
All right. Well, 0 for 1 so far.
Change the first letter in the IPA abbreviation.
Okay. I mean, so a pale ale.
Mm-hmm.
Is it like a New England?
No.
Okay. All right.
New England is a New England IPA, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And I don't know. Maybe this isn't an official beer, but it's what's on the can. It's an American pale ale.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, that's an official type. Okay. So there's still some hoppy, good flavor.
Yep.
Kind of tangy. Kind of.
It's not as citrusy though. You're
looking.
Right. Yep. Definitely got an amber color. I think there's like a maltiness to it a little bit.
Yeah. Maybe that's what I'm thinking. Like the malty,
I think that's what gives
sweetness.
it the amber color. And I love that in a beer. I love that malty flavor.
All right. So ABV. So last week I kind of went a little overboard with the, what was it? The Tropical Burn, the 8.5%. It was delicious, but
very good.
Yeah. That lets you know it was there.
Oh yeah.
This, I'm going to guess just right at 5%.
A little higher than that.
Okay. Yep. Like 5.5?
A little higher than that.
Wow. Is it 6?
It's 6%.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Well, 0 for 2 so far. I can't claim anything there.
This is like baseball. Like it's okay if your batting average is like in the 200s. You're still good enough to be in the game.
We should go back and look. I'm not very good at guessing all this. I do have a good funny story from Mexico, but about guessing what we're drinking, but that's for another time. All right, so I'm over to brewery. You said we've had this brewery before.
It's tough to find a brewery that we haven't had.
Yeah, we're getting there. Maybe the one I talked about earlier. We can try to find some of their stuff. Also, we have like a beer encyclopedia in our friend Forrest. He could probably direct us to some beers that we haven't had before.
We need to have Forrest on.
I was thinking about that. It's been a minute since we've had him on. So anyways, I can only delay so long. Have we been to this brewery before?
We have not.
Have you or I been? To your
I have
knowledge?
not. I'm pretty sure you haven't.
Okay.
But I would be surprised if you have.
All right.
We'll put it that way.
Is it within an hour of us?
No.
Okay.
It's farther away.
Is it in the Des Moines area?
It's not in the immediate Des Moines area.
Oh, man. All right.
It's actually you'll never guess where it's from. It's closer to Des Moines than we are. but it's still probably an hour outside of Des Moines. I would guess.
All right.
So smaller town, not a super big area. Kind of one of Iowa's classic hometowns, I would say.
Okay. Is it a brewery we've had more than once?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Is it NoCoast?
It is.
Yes.
There you go.
All right. I'm going to take the W on that one.
1 for 3. You're batting 333.
All right. So, I'll take it.
That's a good batting percentage.
Hall of Fame number right there. So
that is.
All right. We've got a NoCoast beer. I totally whiffed on everything else. What are we drinking here?
It is NoCoast's American Johnny.
Ooh. I haven't even
Flying
seen
Johnny.
Flying Johnny.
Flying Johnny.
It's got an American flag.
Yeah.
Like a eagle's wings in an American flag. So I can see why you would think that.
The Flying Johnny.
I can't even say that I've seen this can before.
It looked really new to me. Like, I spent an unreal amount of time standing in front of the beer shelf at the Devil's Glen Hy-Vee. Like, they probably think I'm weird because I just scan and I'm like, okay, what haven't we had before? And I pull up my phone and I'm looking through our list and like, no, we've had that one before. And this time I was like, I want to find a brewery we haven't had. And I couldn't.
Well, NoCoast is a good option. I can't think of a NoCoast beer that I haven't liked so far, and we've had at least 2 or 3 of them before.
Yeah, and we're just coming off the 4th of July.
Yeah, this may be, just looking at the can, it looks like a 4th of July can. Yep. So I wouldn't be shocked if this was like a
special release kind of thing.
A limited run. But nowhere on the can does it say like only for 4th of July. But yeah, this can screams America. So in the best way possible. There's a guy in a red wagon about to jump through a flaming hoop with a red, white, and blue eagle flying above it. That's as American as you can get there.
Yeah, it definitely stuck out to me when I was scanning the shelves. And I was drawn to it, and then I got pulled away by some other stuff, and then came back to it. And I'm like, no, we're getting that one. We're just going to do it. So.
And 6% too, like that's as important to me as like flavor. Again, if you go too high, I just can't do too much of it. But if you go too low, I kind of want to feel something when I'm having a good beer. So 6% is usually my like sweet spot of beers that I look for. So yeah, good job so far, NoCoast. We'll give some more opinions of it after a couple more.
There you go. All right, so we are in, what is this now, week 4 of our series of jersey numbers?
Yep, that would make sense.
Yep. So we've kind of split the canon of jersey numbers into 5 chunks. This is week 4 of 5, and then next week we'll finish out with the last set of 20 jersey numbers. But this week we've got jerseys 60 to 79.
Yeah, and maybe this week, as much as any other week, more than any other week, there's some numbers in here that there's a couple of current players that are not what I would consider currently the best to be wearing their jersey number, but they could, by the end of their career, or even the end of their Vikings career, they could etch their name into those numbers. So I'll mention that as we go along. But I feel like the first episode we tried to do every other and kind of made a game of it. But there's so many we don't know because we only know less than half of Vikings history just based on what we've watched. So do we just want to go down the line and kind of say the numbers and kind of how we feel about these guys? Yeah.
How about you list off what you've got here, and then I put together kind of some not necessarily honorable mentions, but like guys that when I look at the list of each player to wear each number, I'm like, yeah, I remember that guy.
Yeah.
Because I was this year's old. This year's old. I was this old, and I remember this was the quarterback, and so on and so forth. So just names that stick out to me throughout my Vikings history, and I think kind of would resonate with you through most of yours as well.
Sweet.
So.
All right. So first one we're going to talk about tonight is number 60.
Yep.
This one...
This is a tough one to start with.
Aside from one guy who is the clear cut, this number is wide open for anybody else to stamp their name on it. The one guy, Roy Winston, a linebacker from 62 to 76, and we've mentioned, so we're getting all this information from profootballreference.com. they have their approximate value score, which kind of ranks players in their career. Roy Winston, his approximate value, is 109.
Which is high.
Yeah.
It's quite high.
Like, I wanted to look up Adrian Peterson's, which, again, he's, a Hall of Fame level player. His approximate value, of course, it's going to take me longer than I wanted it to figure this out. Oh, no. Dead air. That's the best. His approximate value is 129. So for Roy Winston to have 109, like that's pretty close. So
yeah.
Especially for a guy who, I'm sorry, fellow Vikings fans, I've never, to my knowledge, heard his name before today. So
you know who we need to consult on this.
We got our stat guy.
We got to consult Dennis. Dennis, if you're out there listening and watching on YouTube, drop us a comment below. Let us know what you know about Roy Winston. We would love to dive into your wealth of knowledge on the Vikings and share that with our community here. Because
Dennis, we're gonna need a total number of tackles for Roy Winston in his Vikings career.
Yeah, that's what's interesting though about looking at this guy. Like, he kind of played in an era where especially defensive stats were kind of second thought.
Yeah, it was just stop the ball carrier. They didn't even take. I can't find any tackle stat for Roy Winston in his career.
There's nothing out there for tackles. They do have sacks recorded,
which is weird.
But when did they start recording sacks?
It's like 1982 or like anything after 82. Whenever that, it was right about then when stats became an official or sacks became an official stat. So,
and Roy Winston played his whole career for the Vikings, 1962 to 1976.
Yeah,
as a linebacker. So.
And according to that approximate value, a pretty good career. So there's probably a ton of Vikings fans out there that remember this guy's name. Sorry, Roy, you were just before our time. We don't remember you, but glad you're a good Viking.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was number 60. Really not much after Winston. It's
one of those numbers that, I mean, if you're looking for a number to make your own in the Vikings franchise, that might be one to go after. So, all right, what about 61?
61 was interesting. So the guy that Pro Football Reference has the highest score for was someone named Wes Hamilton. He was a guard that played from 76 to 84 with Minnesota. His approximate value is 47, at least with the Vikings. I don't remember if he played anywhere else. I think just the Vikings. But this number seems to be a little bit more close of a race. Larry Bowie is second with a value of 35, another guy from the 60s. Joe Berger, who kind of started off as a backup depth guy and really came in and turned into a starter. And I remember he got like a re-upped contract, even though they didn't have to, because he was still under contract for a few more years just to give him a higher pay raise. He has a value of 32. After that, though, not a whole ton.
Kind of falls after that, but I have Joe as kind of my honorable mention / like player from our era that kind of stands out at number 61. So yeah, he was a guard and a center from 2011 to 2017, and I mean, he is noteworthy enough that most Vikings fans from that era would at least know his name.
Yeah, Joe Berger kind of took over for John Sullivan towards the end of John Sullivan's Vikings career as a center. And his name may come up here in a couple numbers, but yeah.
Berger has a total AV of 42.
Yeah,
he played for the Dolphins and the Cowboys kind of back and forth before coming to Minnesota in 2011.
Yeah, and he was a nice, solidifying light for the offensive line in a few years where the O-line was pretty rough. Berger was a nice surprise and a good, solidifying presence on the line. So, yeah, I definitely appreciated his Vikings career.
All right, 62. Who do we got?
Oh, man. All right, Pro Football Reference has guard / tackle Ed White from 69 to 77. He played for the Vikings. AV of 59, so half as much as Roy Winston. Yeah, I've heard his name before, but not anything I specifically remember. Can you think of anybody 62?
Yeah, so the starting center in the 98 season, arguably one of the best seasons in Vikings history, Jeff Christie, wore that number. And he was not just good in 98, but he was pretty solid as a center for the Vikings from 93 to 98. Or 99, sorry. And then he left and went to Tampa Bay for a couple seasons after that. But Pro Bowler. And
he's got a similar, Christie has a similar AV of 52, close to that 59. So
and a career AV of 74.
Yeah. So overall, probably a better player maybe than Ed White career-wise, but Vikings career-wise, it's a little bit different.
Do you know what else is significant about the number 62 today?
Oh, man. What's that, Ev?
Today's July 8th. 62 days. Until Vikings football is back. 62 days until the first regular season game.
Oh, man.
Until we play
So football's really going to be
Giants.
back before then. It's going to feel like it's back before then.
Well, we're definitely at the bottom of the hill.
Yep.
Getting ready to
Ramp
make
it
our
up.
way back up. It's coming.
Well, Dustin Baker has said before, July 4th seems to, he may even say this later in our episode tonight, July 4th seems to be a good turning point for the season to kind of switch over. And lo and behold, we just passed July 4th. So, yeah.
2 months. 2 months to go.
Let's do it. We can make it.
All right, 63. We got to keep going because we got a ways to go here.
Yeah, we do. All right, 63. Kirk Loudermilk played for the Vikings from 85 to 92. An AV of 43, which seems to be like okay, like good enough. Did not watch this guy. He was the center for the Vikings when I was born. So I don't remember him very much at all. The Loudermilk name kind of rings a bell. I think there was a Hawkeye, an Iowa Hawkeye, like a defensive back in the last handful of years that at least his last name was Loudermilk. I don't know if there's any relation there. Other than him, 63, Brandon Fusco.
I pronounce it Fusco.
Fusco? Well, I don't know who's right, so
I'm going to go with Fusco because that's how I've always said it.
There you go.
I've got him on my list, 63. He was a good guard for the Vikings. Just solid presence there. Started quite a few games, and I feel like starting games at that guard position, tackle position, even the center, just anything on the offensive line, since there are no stats.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, some advanced stats nowadays that you can kind of like, dig into, but the more readily available stats just aren't there for offensive linemen. So I feel like that's a badge of honor. Like if you start games as an offensive lineman and you rack up those starts, the more you rack up, that's a good thing. And Brandon Fusco started 64 out of 67 appearances for the Vikings.
And importantly, he was a starting guard for Adrian Peterson's 2012 MVP year. So that's
true.
That's something to say. I mean, the offensive line is a huge piece of a running back's success. So,
and he started all 16 games that season. So he was there at the right guard position for all of those.
All right, 64. Who do we got, Ev?
Oh, man, that's a tough one. I don't know. How could we ever find somebody that's good at the number 64? Oh, wait, Randall McDaniel. That's right.
Oh, maybe the best player in Vikings history.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
From 88 to 99, AV of 158.
Yeah, as compared to the highest AV to where 63, who had Loudermilk with 43, his
Right.
AV... You could take away Loudermilk's AV and Randall McDaniel would still have over 100 and still be a Hall of Fame worthy player. But
if there was another number that the Vikings could consider retiring, 64 could be on that short list of numbers that
I don't know who'd be mad
retire.
about that. It's just they continue to let people wear it. It didn't even really have too long after McDaniel at least left the Vikings before somebody else picked it up.
Yep.
I think the next one was in 05. Well, Anthony Herrera, he was pretty good.
Yeah, Herrera wasn't bad, and then Blake Brandel, I think, is currently wearing it, right?
Yep.
So, here you go.
All right.
65.
65. So before I looked at this list, there's a big name that I'm sure most Vikings fans have heard of if you didn't watch this guy before, Gary Zimmerman from 86 to 92. But before I looked this list up, my best 65, John Sullivan. I mean, he was You said it earlier.
Yep.
He was Brett Favre's, I think it was just Sullivan's rookie year, or maybe his second year in 09. Yeah, I think he was a second-year player in 09 when he started every game with Brett Favre under center. So
Yep. So he was the center. He appeared in 16 games but didn't start the previous year, his rookie year, and then started all 16 games in 09 that first year with Brett Favre. And yeah, I have him on my list as a pretty notable 65. It's hard not to note somebody that was literally snapping the ball to one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time.
yeah, and again, not to completely gloss over Zimmerman. Zimmerman's AV was 72. Sullivan's was 44, at least with the Vikings. I know Sullivan went on to play for 2 other teams.
Yeah, he played for Washington and the Rams.
Oh, yeah. He went to the Super Bowl with the Rams, I think, when they lost to... I forget who they lost to, but it was Jared Goff's Rams Super Bowl. But, yeah, I mean, Sullivan, he was one of my favorite players when he was on the Vikings. I think he's just a solid, good dude. So, yeah, he's my favorite 65.
A couple of other notable ones. Charlie Johnson.
Okay.
There's actually been 2 Charlie Johnsons. I have Charlie Johnson on here twice. There were 2 Charlie Johnsons. One that wore 64 from
The other
11.
one wore 74.
74,
Yeah.
yeah. So 64 or 65, sorry, was 82 to 84. Different guy. When I saw the name, I was like, oh, hey,
Yeah.
I know that guy. Anyways, my mistake. Pat Elflein, though, wore that number. He was so.
I think he's still kind of bouncing around the league.
And Austin Schlottman.
Yeah. He could have...
Could have been...
He still can. He's just not on the Vikings anymore. I liked Schlottman a lot.
He was a good backup center. Mm-hmm. And it was nice to know that we had him in our back pocket, especially with Bradbury's back injuries.
Yeah. Yeah, and now he's on the on the Giants, so they've got a good one, at least a good backup, if not somebody that can step in and start games.
All right, 66.
Currently, we got Dalton Reisner.
Currently wearing
66.
Yep. This is another one of those numbers, though, where there's only one other player in Vikings history with an AV above 10.
Yeah, and that's Terry Tausch. Played for the Vikes from 82 to 88 with an AV of 37. Sorry, Terry. If somebody wants to come in, I think the jury's still out. Even if Reisner wanted to come in and make himself the best 66 in Vikings history, he still can. The door is definitely open, even for Reisner, who's 28 or so years old.
Yeah.
He could still come in and do that.
Yeah, so Terry Tausch, he started 68 games for the Vikings.
Yeah.
Played for the Niners for one season, it looked like. Didn't start any games for them. So most of his career was spent with the Vikes, and those were kind of some rough years for the Vikings, the 80s. Pretty much all of the 80s were pretty bad.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyways, Terry Tausch, there you go. 67?
67. We got Grady Alderman. From 61 to 74, I think he might have been the first 67 in Vikings history. An AV of 106. Yeah, I don't think, unless you're a Hall of Famer, sorry, Ed Ingram, unless you're a Hall of Famer, you're not going to end up being the best 67 in Vikings history. You got to get past Grady for that.
So, multiple-time Pro Bowler, 6-time Pro Bowler. Mm-hmm. A couple of All-Pro votes. I don't know that he was ever voted All-Pro, but yeah. Some really, really good years for the Vikings. He was drafted by the Lions. Actually.
The year before the Vikings started playing. I saw that earlier.
And then made his way to Minnesota for his sophomore campaign and was with the Vikings for the rest of his career, mostly at left tackle.
Yeah.
So again, one of those non-sexy positions where stats just really aren't a thing. Mm-hmm. But was pretty solid at that left tackle position through some really, really good years of Vikings football.
Oh, yeah. Some of the best years.
So, Dennis, again, fill us in if you know anything about Grady Alderman.
Yeah.
But other than him, you got Dennis Swilly from 77 to 87. And then Ed Ingram currently wears that number.
Yeah, I think the jury's still out on Ingram. He kind of started off a little slow, stepped on Cousins' foot a couple of times.
More than a few.
Although after, the first 4 or 5 games last year, where he started off a little slow in his second year, he started to turn it around. So the jury's still out. He's entering his 3rd year in the league, Ed Ingram is. So he could still, he could still turn into something. Get a few Pro Bowls under his belt. He could, I know I just said you probably won't, but he could theoretically take the lead above Grady Alderman, but I wouldn't put money on that. 68.
That's another one of those tough ones where it's just like there's not a lot here. There are some guys that have been maybe flashes in the pan, but
I must say 68 is my favorite number. When I did play football, which when I was on the team, I shouldn't say play because I never played. When I was on the team, I wore 68 on the bench. I
bet you looked good in 68.
I have the body type for 68. Let's just say that. But I have a personalized Vikings jersey for 68. So maybe to me, I'm the best Viking. No, I'm just kidding. I can't say that. But 68, Charles Goodrum from 73 to 79 got an AV of 41. So I don't know who currently wears it, if anybody right now. This says Henry Bird wore it in 2023.
Is he even on the team anymore?
I don't really know. We are terrible Vikings fans, but somebody could take a run at that number. If you were a good player and get a handful of Pro Bowls, sorry, Charles, they could take 68 away from you. So if you're an up and coming Viking and you play defensive tackle or offensive line, come get 68 and have a day. Anybody you can think of? This list is pretty light. TJ Clemmings wore it.
It's tough. Yeah, there's not a lot there, but Goodrum, he was on. What was it? 2 Super Bowl teams?
Yeah,
3 Super Bowl teams, 74, 75, 77.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe he wasn't the greatest, but he started all 12 games in 74.
Oh, this is terrible. I'm sorry. That was way louder than I thought it would be.
It's all good. Tin foil coming off the beer. No worries. He started every game in his 3 Super Bowl seasons.
Yeah.
If I'm counting correctly and I'm looking at the right thing. So to start he was a tackle for his first 3 seasons and then a guard, all on the left side it looks like. But yeah, to start all of those games and go to 3 Super Bowls.
Yeah, that's a solid career right there.
For sure.
All right, 69. Can you think of anybody? I don't know. This joke is not even getting old to me.
No, we actually we were there when he was inducted into the Ring of Honor.
The great.
He rode in on a freaking horse.
Yeah, mullet flowing.
It was amazing. We have commemorative mullets somewhere.
We literally do. It's somewhere around here.
It's around here somewhere.
Of course, we're talking about future Hall of Famer. He's not in yet. I think he's one of few people to be a finalist 4 times and not get in. He will be in. If he's not, then stop watching football. But Jared Allen. Jared Allen, drafted by the Chiefs, played with the Vikings, and then kind of had a couple of weird years with the Bears and a Super Bowl losing year with the Panthers. But yeah, Jared Allen, AV of 75 with the Vikings. Honestly, his career with the Vikings was probably too short. 6 seasons, 5-6 seasons, yeah, maybe 7. After him, it was Doug Sutherland as far as next best player to wear 69. And then pretty close after, those guys is Rashad Hill at 16 with an AV. So
yeah, he's on my list of just notable names to wear other than the obvious Jared Allen. Mm-hmm. And Rashad Hill was never a starter. He only had 22 starts, but he appeared in 74 games for the Vikings. So, and he was on the team from 16 to 21. So just a solid presence, I think, mostly at tackle, right tackle.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Jared Allen's another guy, he was way better he played longer. He was better for the Vikings. But he also could be considered one of the best 69s for the Kansas City Chiefs. just looking it up right here, he's second in AV for the Chiefs to wear 69. The first is a guy that played from 60 to 67, Cheryl Hedrick. But we're not a Chiefs podcast. We're a Vikings podcast. Jared Allen was good. I guess that's my whole point.
Moving on to number 70. We could probably just gloss over this one because there's only ever been one person to wear the number.
We can't gloss over this.
But we can't gloss over this because he's arguably one of the greatest Vikings of all time.
Yeah.
And that's why there's only been one number 70 in Vikings history, and that's the great Jim Marshall.
The great Jim Marshall, who it is a travesty that he is not in the Hall of Fame.
That is true.
I almost don't care about the Hall of Fame until he gets in. I know it just like the Pro Bowl, the Hall of Fame is a major popularity contest, but there's guys that you just know, like Brett Favre. Like I think famously the committee, talked for about 2 seconds until they were all like, yeah, Brett Favre in. Yes, he's in. Jim Marshall, to me, he's in. He's just, you don't have to be a diehard Vikings fan to know that he is a Hall of Famer. Get him in. Come on, Hall of Fame. What are you doing?
I'm looking at the stat line for Jim Marshall right now.
It's too long. You have to scroll a couple of times.
It's crazy. He was drafted by the Browns in 1960, which is a year before the Vikings were in existence. Another one of those players that kind of predates the Vikings as a franchise. But once he made his way to Minnesota in 61, the first year of the franchise's existence, he was there until he retired in 1979 for the better part of 2 decades.
Had 270 straight starts.
He never missed a game. He started every single game that he played in.
When Brett Favre broke the record for most, consecutive starts, he broke Jim Marshall's record. Like,
I know.
This Jim Marshall needs to be in the Hall of Fame, and the Hall of Fame was a joke until they let him in. It's crazy. It's crazy that he's not in. But rightfully so, he's got his number retired. Nobody can ever wear that number again for the Vikings. And fun fact, Marshall on How I Met Your Mother was named after Jim Marshall.
Yeah, you sent me a really interesting article.
Yeah.
Last week or 2 weeks ago about the connection between, was it a writer on the show?
Yeah. So I think, so we'll get off on a tangent here.
We'll link the article.
The article is written by Matthew Coller, and he was trying to get to the bottom of a very famous Vikings GIF that's out there on the internet. It's the famous one of Marshall Erickson. What's his the actor's name? Seagal Patrick. That what it? Jason
Seagal.
Yeah.
Seagal, something like that.
It's of him at a Vikings bar, and the GIF is just him pounding the table and saying, "Damn!" And
because he's responding to, you're talking about the '98 NFC Championship game. Damn.
Yeah, he's wearing that number 70 Jim Marshall jersey, which I learned through Matthew Coller's article. That jersey that Marshall Erickson wore on the show How I Met Your Mother was gifted it was lent to the show from the Vikings.
And it was Jim Marshall's jersey.
Yeah, I don't know if it was like a game worn thing or not. That would have been pretty insane for the Vikings to do. But yeah, it's a really good article. We'll link to it. Matthew Coller did a really good job getting to the bottom of this, 0.2 second GIF that's out there that I probably sent to Evan, and he's probably sent to me about 1 billion times. If you're a Vikings fan who is on social media, you have seen this GIF, even if you don't like How I Met Your Mother. But yeah, it's all because of Jim Marshall.
And if you don't like How I Met Your Mother, what are you doing with your life?
Yeah, come on. It's fun. It just enriches your life. It's cheesy, but it's good.
I think it's back on Netflix.
It might. It's somewhere. If you can't, it's somewhere.
It's on Hulu for sure, and I'm pretty sure it's back on Netflix, which means no ads, which is the best.
Ooh, yeah, there you go.
So, all right. Number 70, Jim Marshall.
Put him in the Hall of Fame.
We weren't alive, but we just know as lifelong Vikings fans how incredible he was.
A purple people eater.
He was a purple people eater, and yes, I back you 100%. We should start a petition. Let's get Jim Marshall into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Let's make it happen.
Can I get off on an even less important tangent for half a second? Is that okay? Madden, if you play Madden, you can make somebody wear number 70 for the Vikings. Their whole thing is if it's on the field, it's in the game. make retired numbers not available for these teams. I don't want to see a number 70 for the Vikings from some, undrafted guy that won't make the team. They can't do it in real life. Don't let them do it in Madden.
Is there a 68 on your team?
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to look.
That's your number.
I don't put myself in the. We've already gotten too deep into Madden tangent right now. Anyways.
All right. Anyways, moving on. 71. Number 71. Who is the best Viking to wear 71?
This is a good number. There's some good guys at the top of the list. And the current guy, Christian Darisaw, he's got a chance to own the number outright. So David
really
Dixon.
Yep.
David Dixon from 94 to 04. He was the Vikings, I think he was a left tackle.
Guard.
A guard. He was a Vikings starting guard when I first started becoming a fan. His AV is 75. He's really good. So Christian Darisaw, who currently wears that number, he would have to continue his tear of being a great left tackle to maybe have a chance of taking the outright best 71 in Vikings history, but he could. I could see that happening. There's a couple other names on this list of best Vikings to wear 71.
Yeah, so Darisaw, obviously. Phil Lodeholt was another one that stuck out to me.
That guy was a massive giant.
He was a
still is
big piece of man.
Yes.
He was a chunk. But yeah,
in the best way possible.
In exactly what you want.
Yeah.
At the kind of the corner of the offensive line and preventing people from coming after your quarterback.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he played right tackle too, which makes it all the more impressive. Riley Reef, who played, I guess he only played 4 seasons for the Vikings, which is kind of crazy. Reef was one of those guys. He's got probably, a solid career's worth spread out between a few different teams, notably the Lions and the Vikings, and then he kind of bounced around. Is he still in the league? I think he might still be.
He might be. Yeah, he played for New England last year.
Okay.
Only played in 1 game, but
okay.
Was with the Patriots. So.
Yeah, Reef was good. He was a starting right tackle, left tackle for the Case Keenum NFC Championship year. So,
and he's an Iowa grad, so went to the University of Iowa. He's from South Dakota, but played his college days right here, just down the road in Iowa City. So there you go.
Also a Culpepper. There's 2 Culpeppers in Vikings history, and one of them is Ed.
Ed Culpepper played 1 year, the first year.
Yeah, his AV is not too high, but it's a fun Vikings name. So
yeah, all right, 72.
72. I think we'll hear this a little bit later. Is this one of the ones that Dustin might mention later?
Yeah, he might.
So the best ever so far is James White for the Vikings, a guy who played from 76 to 83, a defensive tackle. His AV is 42. So pretty okay, but not Hall of Fame crazy numbers. Interestingly, tied for second for the best ever, at least as far as Pro Football Reference goes, Ezra Cleveland, who was traded away last year.
Yeah, Ezra Cleveland is up there in the players to wear 72 for the Vikings, and traded away, and that was kind of an interesting storyline to follow last season. But turned out to be okay for the Vikings, I guess. Yeah,
a sneaky name for the Vikings in 2016, that offensive line, they were going down like flies. So at one point they had to sign Jake Long, who was a former number 1 overall pick for the Dolphins. But by the time he got to the Vikings, he was getting toward, that was the end of his career, was the 4 games he played for Minnesota. And he ended it with I think it was a pretty good knee injury. But yeah, he wore 72 as well. So this is another number if you're an up-and-coming Viking.
Interestingly enough, he was a 4-time Pro Bowler for the Dolphins.
Yeah, really good. He was really good. I think his injury, he just got bit by the injury bug a little too much. So he could have been great. He was just ended up being pretty darn good. I don't know who's currently wearing that number, if anybody. But there's a chance if you can get a few Pro Bowls, you can usurp James White for that best ever to wear 72.
What about 73?
73. The first player that comes to mind when I think of 73 is Sharif Floyd.
Yeah.
One of those 3 first-round picks in, 2012, 2013, with Xavier Rhodes and Cordero Patterson. He was on his way. He would have ended up being maybe the second or third best Viking to wear 73. Also, Sharif Floyd wore 95 his first year because 73 wasn't available. But the best ever was, I believe, the Vikings' only first overall pick that they've made, Ron Yeri.
Yeah. Yep. First overall in 1968.
Yeah. He solidified that offensive line for a long time for the Vikings. Played from 68 to 81 for the Vikings.
7-time Pro Bowler and 6-time All-Pro.
Yeah, a Vikings AV of 135, one of the highest we'll see on this list.
Yep. Pretty incredible. Yeah, I had Todd Stussy, actually, at 73. Just another notable name. He played kind of during that prime era of my childhood.
Yeah, in 98. That's a significant year.
And I mentioned this earlier, but Todd Stussy had 111 appearances for the Vikings, and he started all of them.
That's wild.
So
to not miss a game for injury at all, that's crazy.
Just very consistent. He ended up leaving in 2000 after the 2000 season, went to Carolina. Looks like he had a couple of good years, and then he bounced around after that, Tampa Bay, St. Louis. But Todd Stussy, couple-time Pro Bowler. Got a few All-Pro votes in 97, 98. Left tackle during that historic 98 season. So, yeah, he's definitely a name that stands out to me, and one that, when I think back to that era of Vikings football, he definitely comes to mind. And he has a really memorable last name,
Oh, yeah.
too.
I mean, that's one that maybe it's, sneaky, more common than you think it is, but if I ever heard somebody named Stussy, instantly I'd be like, wait, are you related to Todd?
All right, 74.
Yeah, 74. So the best one so far by a mile is Bryant McKinnie.
Yeah. And he knows Dustin Baker pretty well, and Dustin's going to talk about Bryant McKinnie at length here in a little bit in our interview with him. So
yeah,
a little teaser.
Dustin, if you happen to be listening back, next time we talk, I'm going to work the courage up to see if we can somehow get some kind of an introduction to Bryant McKinnie, because that would be awesome. He is one of the more memorable Vikings players in my fanhood years. Really good left tackle. Even won a Super Bowl towards the end of his career with the Ravens. And he shared an offensive line with the Ravens in that Super Bowl win with Matt Burke, who we may talk about later, another former Viking. So, yeah, he's got a Vikings AV of 67. Next up is Charlie Johnson, who took over at that left tackle spot and the 74 number the year after Bryant McKinnie went on to, I believe it was just straight to Baltimore. So, yeah, Charlie Johnson next up. He's got a 28 AV. So, outside of Bryant McKinnie, that number could be had. So, I think a Hall of Famer could take it over, but it would take quite a bit to take it over from Bryant.
A couple other just minor names, but still contributors to the Vikings in the last handful of years. Mike Remmers wore it in 17 and 18, and then Ole Udoh wore it for 4 years.
Yeah, and he just went on to another team. I think he's a Saint now. And currently it's someone named Spencer Rowland for the Vikings who holds that number, and I don't know anything about him. So
there you go. What about 75?
75. This is another number that there's some good names. And at the top of the list, you've got Keith Millard. Played for the Vikings from 85 to 90, so 6 seasons. An AV of 60. And up until a few years ago, had a firm hold of that number. Matt Khalil kind of made a run for it until he just stopped being able to play good football. But in 2018, the Vikings drafted Brian O'Neill, who is currently number 2 on the list of best 75s in Vikings history, and he's still playing and could take over that number. So Millard, I think I just said his AV is 60. Brian O'Neill, currently his AV is 47, and I mean, he's still in his 20s of age. I forget how old he is right now, but he's got some good years of football left in him. O'Neill could easily a decade from now be considered the best 75, which is crazy because Millard was really good too.
And interestingly enough, Matt Burke wore that number his first season in Minnesota.
Oh, yeah.
Which was 98.
I think I did know that at one point, but obviously had forgotten about it.
He wasn't obviously the starting center, but he was on the bench as a center and wore that number, and he appeared in 7 games.
Yeah.
So there you go. Matt Burke wore that number as well.
Nice. All right, 76. We're getting down to the nitty-gritty here, almost done. First name I think of is Steve Hutchinson.
Yep, for sure.
Current Hall of Famer. He played for the Vikings, the Seahawks. I think he finished off with the Titans. Maybe another team or two. No, I think that's it. And he's a guy, Steve Hutchinson is, that he would have had a solid career if you only looked at his Seahawks numbers or only looked at his Vikings numbers. Like if he had only played, the years that he was on those teams and nothing else, he still would have had a solid career. But really good guy. Still not the best to ever wear 76, apparently.
But a 7-time Pro Bowler and a 5-time All-Pro, first-team All-Pro, between the Seahawks and the Vikings. So pretty outstanding career.
Yeah. The best, according to Pro Football Reference, though, is Tim Irwin, a tackle from 81 to 93. His score was 91. I believe he played for 3 teams here, but mostly for the Vikings. So for Hutchinson to play half of the time of his career that Tim Irwin did for the Vikings and to still not be terribly far behind, that's pretty good.
Another notable name that I had here was Chris Lewinsky.
Oh, yeah. Another 98 guy.
On the team in 98. Kind of bounced back and forth between tackle and guard. I would say he mostly played guard. But he was in his rookie season on that 98 team, played in a game. So he got a taste of the greatness and then went on to kind of bolster that offensive line for, 4 seasons? Looks like maybe he dealt with some injury or lost the starting job at some point before being traded away to Arizona. So,
All right, 77. It's a retired Vikings number.
Yes, it's retired and for good reason. Corey Stringer, and I'll talk about this later on when we interview Dustin Baker. But I referenced this article from the Star Tribune. Got a little cutout here with Randy Moss at Corey Stringer's funeral. He was offensive lineman, passed away from complications after a heat stroke during Vikings training camp in 2000.
Yeah, pretty tragic. Dustin does kind of talk pretty cool memory how I think he got to meet Corey Stringer a few times. Yeah. Really casually too. So again, just to mention tragedy for the Vikings this week's pretty tough too, because they just lost Kyrie Jackson. Another tragic. I feel like this team has been bitten by tragedy a few times in its existence, and it kind of sucks. But rightfully so, 77 is retired for a guy that would have gone on, without question, to be the best 77 in history. But apparently on the field, as far as stats go, Gary Larson was statistically the best 77 in Vikings history with an AV of 85. And he played for the Vikings from 65 to 74, so 10 seasons.
Yeah, yep. There you go. All right, a couple more here. 78.
78. For me, it's Matt Burke. I don't need to look at any other number. There's a couple other names kind of up there too. Also, I was wrong earlier, just to kind of back up a little bit. The number 77, there was a different Culpepper to wear that number in the 90s. So
there are 3 Culpeppers in Vikings history.
Yep. So anyway, 78, Matt Burke. He is the Pro Football Reference best to ever wear 77. Somewhat close behind him, Matt Burke's got a score of 79. The next up is a score of 65, Steve Riley, who played for 11 seasons, 74 to 84. So
I've got Dakota Dozier on my list.
Yeah, he was a recent Viking.
Yeah, recent. And, I mean, he started every game in 2020.
Well, Evan, please don't say he was good, because he was terrible, and they just didn't leave. They didn't go away from him.
I know, but he was there.
He was there. He was barely there. A lot of plays he basically was not. He was a turnstile.
He was there.
Again, I'm sure he's a good dude, but man, he contributed a lot of sacks against the Vikings in those couple of years.
How about Michael Pierce in 2021? How do you feel about him?
I don't like that guy. He opted out the COVID year after signing a big free agent contract with the Vikings. So a few weeks later, opted out for the whole season, and then never did anything for the Vikings.
He went back to the Ravens.
Yeah. So Michael Pierce, again, I'm sure you're a good dude. You ended up giving up your number back to Everson Griffin, which I believe we'll talk about again later. But you were a paycheck chaser for the Vikings, and then you went back to Baltimore. So, again, sure you're a good dude, but you didn't do my team any good. So,
79. Let's finish out this list here.
Yeah. All right, 79. Was this the other one that...
This could be one that's still kind of very much up for grabs. Yeah. So
come get it.
The top one is who?
Doug Martin. Played for the Vikings from 80 to 89. Defensive end. AV of 56. He's a first-round pick in the 80 draft for the Vikes. Only ever played for the Vikings. Yeah.
Defensive end had 11.5 sacks in 82. Arguably his best season.
Yeah.
Only played in 9 games. Only started 9 games. But
yeah, so if somebody wants to come and put a stamp on a number, I mean, 56 is respectable, but again, a Hall of Famer would definitely easily take that number over. So come get it.
79.
Yep.
You said 56.
Oh, I meant, if I said 56, that was Doug Martin's AV score.
I see what you're saying. All right.
Another fun note about that 79 number, former Viking Mike Harris. I believe he's the one that ultimately had to retire from football because at some physical they found, I'm going to get this wrong, it was a physical a physical issue. I think it was like a heart defect or something, which maybe a neck thing. He had to retire ultimately because it was one of those like, hey, if you keep playing, this could get you. But then he ended up working for the Vikings. He may still work for the Vikings. I know for a minute he was the guy that inspected everybody's uniform before they went out on the field for games. So, yeah.
There you go. Well, that's going to round out our 4th of 5 weeks in this number series.
Yeah.
And as we mentioned a few times as we kind of went through that list, we'll chat with Dustin Baker here. And at the end of our chat with him, we kind of asked him, like, hey, what do you think about the best Vikings to wear some of those numbers from 60 to 79? So he'll give us his thoughts on those. And yeah, we had a great time chatting with him too. We always do.
Yep. You guys will love it. It was a good chat.
So yeah, we're going to transition over to that and then we'll catch you on the other side.
All right.
All right. Welcome back, Skol Hoppers. So we are graced yet again with friend of the show, Dustin Baker. Dustin, thanks for coming on again.
Hell yeah, man. We're less than 10 weeks away from the regular season.
It's coming up.
Yeah, I know we're at the I guess the tail end of the dry spot in the off season. I always consider the 4th of July a symbolic turning of the page to when kind of the NFL sites start to put out their content for fantasy. So as of Friday, at least, that's when I emotionally am like, all right, this is football season from a writing perspective.
Yeah, let's go. Mm-hmm. Especially with the only sport that's really on is baseball.
Yeah, I like tennis, so Wimbledon's going on, but baseball, yep. Mm-hmm.
All right. Evan's brother-in-law is a tennis coach in college.
Oh, sweet. Okay, right on.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess the WNBA is kind of taking a high rise right now too. So if you're interested, we're Iowa boys, so we've been following the Caitlin Clark train for a couple seasons now. But
rightfully so.
yeah, it's been exciting. But we're not here to talk about women's basketball. We're here to talk about the Vikings. And because Dustin has graced us with his presence again, we always love it. Thanks again for coming on.
Absolutely.
I threw some questions at you earlier. And then we'll kind of roll you into a segment we've had going the last few weeks, and that we'll have going. I think after this episode, Evan, what do we got? One more after this episode of the jersey number?
Yeah, you got the easy one coming up.
Yeah, exactly. I'll tell you what, the jersey numbers in a lot of the 30s and some of the 40s, that was a pretty dry area.
Okay.
Even the 50s, like to go back, and especially for Evan and I, we're in the age where the best players to wear a lot of those jersey numbers were in like the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
Really, even you, Dustin, you weren't watching in the 60s and 70s either. Like none of us really. We saw names that we've never seen before in some of those 30s and 40s and stuff. So it's a fun topic though. We've been having fun with it.
I love it.
So we'll just dive in. So we got Summer Olympics coming up. And it's not going to be in this Summer Olympics, but flag football sounds like in 2028 is going to be in the Summer Olympics, the next one, which is kind of interesting. It's probably the most. I'm not an Olympics guy. I don't usually watch much, but I'll definitely be watching that. However, I wanted to get your thoughts. If flag football was in the Olympics this year, which Viking would be on the team? Because it sounds like NFL players are probably going to have a shot to be on that team.
Yeah, so the way that I construed this topic is, aside from the usual suspects, I think football is football no matter what. So if you were going to construct a team and, Jefferson wanted to play, of course, you would grab Jefferson and probably Darrisaw, although I don't know how applicable it is for a tackle in flag football. So I wanted to look at this from a different angle. And because I'm a novice at flag football, I looked at speed. So I would take some of the guys that are on the naughty list right now for the Vikings and transplant them to the flag football Vikings Olympics. So right out of the gate, that would be Jalen Naylor. Not that he's really on a naughty list. It's just that we don't know if he's going to win WR3. I had a show last night on my YouTube show, Vikes Now. My guest, Sean Kenner, claims Jalen Naylor is going to be outright cut. That's what the whole episode was about. That's his hot take. But I wouldn't do that for these purposes, nor would I probably cut him for the regular season. Jalen Naylor is built. His reputation is built upon speed. When he first got drafted, I talked to him on a different show with Bryant McKinney, and he was a real cool dude, and he even touted his speed. That's what he's known for. So I'd be sure to make him the WR2 on my flag football team. Lewis Seen, he is an athletic animal, and we're low on him right now because the Vikings probably won't keep 7 safeties. He didn't play much last year, and then he had the injury in his rookie year. But if we're going to play flag football, I want a mean guy like that who's also really fast for a safety. And then if we are going to get really sexy with the flag football bit, I would take Ty Chandler over Aaron Jones because of, you guessed it, speed. Ty Chandler is one thing Vikings fans don't talk about enough because he's just recently risen to semi-prominence. Ty Chandler is fast as hell. And I think we're just so used to him being better than Alexander Madison that we're like, yeah, let's keep him. He's also really fast. So in the off chance that Aaron Jones gets hurt and we have to showcase Chandler as an RB1, the guy has the speed. And so on the Olympic flag football, give me Chandler certainly over Aaron Jones because Jones is about to hit the dreaded age of 30 in December.
Yeah. Jones will not be playing age when in 2028 when the next Summer Olympics comes around. Evan, do you have any guys you can think of off the top of your head that would be on the team if it was this year?
I'm definitely on board with speed. I think prioritizing speed in flag football. I like Brandon Powell maybe because he's small. I think a smaller, shiftier player might be really beneficial. You can kind of be more elusive that way, get away from people trying to grab the flags and make the tackles that way. So, yeah, he'd be another one that I'd add to the list.
Did we forget any?
So I was going to go a little outside the box. I think a guy, if we were just looking at Vikings, I think Nick Mullins would be pretty fun to watch because he can really, he's a gunslinger, he can shift around, don't have to worry about too much getting tackled. It would just be ripping the flag off. But he was the guy, Dustin, you said it before, if it's 3rd and 20, and if Nick Mullins is back there, you got a good chance. He's going to...
Oh, yeah, have no fear at all.
So I feel like these receivers, too, would be pretty fearless. So if you got Justin Jefferson out there who's already going to jump up 1,000 yards in the air and catch any ball that's around him, Nick Mullins, there would be other better quarterbacks in the league. But if we're just looking at Vikings right now, he'd kind of be fun because, just that gunslinger mindset.
Yeah, and you could he could be one. Like, it almost feels like you'd have an expansion draft type of thing, and we really wouldn't care if Nick Mullins was to go play flag football. Whereas everybody else, we're like, don't do anything stupid and get hurt. The other two guys, speed merchants. While we're on the topic, really quietly, Lucky Jackson is faster than Cheetah too. Leading up to his, I guess, out of college, I don't know if he technically would say lead up to his draft because he was undrafted in 2020. He ran a 4.36. And so his speed isn't appreciated by fans. And then Kane Nwangwu, if there's a kick returner in flag football, you got to have him on the team. So that's basically the all-speed team is mine.
Nice. All right, so the last couple of days, really, I think yesterday, and since this high-quality workout video came out in the last week or so, Vikings fans have had a lot of fun with like, oh, what if Thielen came back to the team?
Mm-hmm.
What if we got him back from the Panthers? It's crazy. It won't happen, right? But how realistic is that idea? Is it a 1 it'll never happen, or a 10 like we should be pulling out the 19s again? What do you think, Dustin?
No, it's certainly not a like. So there's a lot of theories that circulate Vikings Twitter and the Vikings social media orbit in general that were like, really, you're talking about that? And I'm the first to say, let's be serious, people. No, I don't think this one is ridiculous, but I also don't think it's imminent or there's really any plan. The Adam Thielen thing is intriguing because let's face it, if you followed any Vikings content in the last 2 weeks, it seems like he's still on the team. Like he feels exactly like a player who's on the team because he's throwing with the rookie quarterback. He's going on K-Fan with PA. He's talking about how great McCarthy is. It feels like he has never left. So I think that is the intriguing part that says, this is kind of weird. Is he trying to hint at something? Well, no, you can't flirt with another team while you're on another different team. But the reason that I won't rule this one out is there's a couple reasons for it. In my opinion, they're decent reasons. So the Panthers last year, Adam Thielen was their WR1, their bell cow, because the only thing they really had otherwise that was established was DJ Chark, and he's pretty mid. But now they got Deontay Johnson, and at this point in Deontay Johnson's career, he's better and more prolific than Thielen currently is. Maybe not when we compare careers in 10, 12 years, but he is a better asset right now. And then they drafted Xavier Legette, or Leggetti, however you say his last name. So there are two new wide receivers for the Panthers on top of what could be considered already a little crowded with Jonathan Mingo, Terrace Marshall, Amir Smith-Marset plays there.
Yeah.
So last year, Thielen could waltz onto that team, go 3-14 or whatever they finished, and still get his first 1,000-yard season since 2018. Now, however, they've beefed up the arsenal like they probably should have done last year. Mm-hmm. Therefore, because Thielen is about to be 34 years old, he's more expendable now than he was last year. You would right now, it's probably perfect for him to be the Panthers WR3 behind the upside of Legette or Leggetti and then Deontay Johnson, who should be the WR1. So there is a chance that somebody like Mingo looks great in the summer, or the Panthers realize why do we have this guy who's 34? In that sense, they'd have to eat about $8-9 million, but they could move on from him, in late August. And I would bet money the Vikings would pounce if that would happen because he's the hometown kid, and we think the team needs a WR3. The other reason is because we need a WR3, or at least that's the perception among fans, because we have the big mystery about who's it going to be. He's really gettable. Let's say the Panthers have done everything I just said and want to go younger and think that they have better options. Adam Thielen shouldn't be hard to get via trade if the Vikings get into the first week of August and think, shit, we forgot about WR3 this whole offseason, boys. Yeah, what are we going to do? You can get Thielen for a conditional 6th rounder or so because his contract's a little bloated for somebody that old. And then, he's just going to continue to get older, obviously. So you balance the Vikings' lack of draft capital for trades, plus possibly needing a WR3, which they have a perceived weakness, and then the hometown angle that says, hey, you played for the Vikings for almost a decade. Why don't you come back? All of those figures, to me, coagulate to say it's not unheard of that Thielen would be back. And then finally, as a tidbit, let's say this is all just cockamamie, it's not going to happen. The Panthers can easily move on from Thielen at the end of this year. And then if Thielen wanted to come back at age 35 and be the WR4 or WR3, depending on how he does this year, it would be very easy to obtain him next offseason.
Yeah. It's funny, you just basically summarized one of your recent Vikings territory
Oh, did I? Weird how that goes, huh?
It's read it today.
Yeah.
I highly encourage our listeners to go check out Vikings territory. I think we send, we say it a lot. I don't know how many Skol Hoppers we send your way, but
thank you.
Vikings territory. That one was a good article. There's a ton more. So it's funny to hear you. You obviously feel you believe the words you're typing out because you just said
well,
everything
this one
again.
It's the big part of the WR3. Like if they had, basically, even if they had like Javon Baker, the rookie on the Patriots, they had a guy like that, I'd be like, nah, you don't want to go to a 34-year-old when you got the guy you already drafted. But they just don't have anybody unless Brandon Powell is the real deal. And then there's just this sneaking suspension that before it's all said and done, Thielen's probably going to come back, whether it's for a final season or one of those one-day contracts. And if he's going to be orphaned, it makes all the sense in the world to go to the team that needs a WR3 and with the guy who happens to love the rookie quarterback already.
Yeah. Evan, purely from a fan, from a heart stance, what would you want? Are you ready just to see what we've got in Deshaun Jones and Brandon Powell and Jalen Naylor, or would you be like, all right, come back, Adam. You're my only Vikings jersey. I need to root for you again. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, you're really tugging on my heartstrings there. You bought that jersey for me because you knew that I had said, and I think I had said on the podcast at some point that if I wanted to get a jersey, that would be one of the ones that I would consider, just because Adam Thielen's been just a staple in the Vikings franchise for most of my adult fanhood. I mean, I would definitely be excited if he came back. That would be, I think there would be some mixed feelings among the general fan base. But I think all in all, he'd be welcomed back. I think a lot of people would say, yeah, it'd be great if he could retire as a Viking. I think he's done quite a bit for the organization and for the community of the Twin Cities. I think he's just generally pretty well liked and respected. I don't think there would be a lot of negative emotions with that. But the age is certainly a factor in terms of what you can do on the field. And yeah, he had a pretty decent season last year, but there wasn't much happening in Carolina to speak of anyways. So I don't know. It would be interesting. I don't know that he fits that wide receiver 3 need that the Vikings currently have. I think he'd be kind of a fringe player at best to fill that role, maybe more of a wide receiver 4.
Okay.
Yeah, the reason that the divorce happened in general after the 2022 season is because the Vikings, in my opinion, no longer deemed him worthy of WR2. And then bada bing, a couple months later, about 6 weeks later, they drafted Jordan Addison. There you go, you have your WR2. So it wasn't a messy split. It was just that, hey, we don't want to pay you this much money, A, and B, we don't think that you should be WR2 anymore. Well, that awkward conversation is done. So if the Vikings think that he can do a bang-up job of WR3, there's just a lot of boxes that are easily checked that I can't rule this one out.
Yeah. If it were Madden, he would already be on the team on Viking.
You probably would have got a better free agent or drafted a guy.
Maybe.
Yeah. That's what I would have done.
Yeah. Well, speaking of incoming free agents, the Vikings signed Andrew Van Ginkel, right? That's his first name? I'm suddenly terrified that I got his first name wrong.
How did you get another Iowa guy wrong?
I know. He's from the other side of the state.
Rock Rapids.
State right now.
Closer to me.
Yeah, that's true. We were going to ask if you guys have been getting a lot of flooding in your way.
Yeah, my basement was inundated about a week and a half ago.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it really sucks.
Oh, man. Well, I'm sorry about that. But anyways, Andrew Van Ginkel, another Vikings territory article I read today.
Sweet.
Kind of talked about how it's kind of really good that we ended up with Dallas Turner, not just because, he's Dallas Turner, he's a good rookie, good player, but he's going to be needed probably. It looks like he's going to be needed a lot earlier than we expected, just because Van Ginkel, a Flores guy, probably B+ level type free agent, good guy. He's injured, and we're not really too sure when he's going to be coming in. Is he already kind of entering the free agent bust category before they even, suit up for training camp?
Well, I'll say, because we even have this question, you can tell we have deep scars from Marcus Davenport. That's for damn sure. No, he's not. So I think what we realized is why we got him on the affordable deal that we did, because he basically, if he's going to have an injury-plagued offseason or a wait-and-see, it explains why you could get a starting caliber edge rusher for 2 years and $20 million. That's pretty cheap these days. So I think that is the first little hint that I remember when I saw that deal. I think I might even said on this show that was like my favorite move of the offseason because it was an affordable deal for a starting edge rusher. And then to your point here, getting Dallas Turner, Van Ginkel turned into gravy. No, I guess there's a path for him to be like Marcus Davenport, but that would really be an indictment on the front office if they swung and missed 2 years in a row on their free agent edge plan. But no, Van Ginkel is really good. I don't know if you've peeped his PFF scores last year. It was like otherworldly. We talk about like Olympians. He had like an Olympic score of like 92 or some PFF grade like that. But yeah, he was hurt down the stretch. Like almost every Dolphins edge rusher, I don't know if you remember that, before the playoff game, they were signing like guys who were good in 2014 to play edge rusher. I think it was like Justin Houston or those types of, maybe Melvin Ingram. Whoever it was, they were getting relics off the street. So yeah, it's the Liz Frank injury. Yeah, it's an eye roll, I think, just right now. And because of our recent paranoia about an injury permeating the season or Davenport just not coming back from an ankle strain, we tend to be a little...
Here too.
Yeah, we tend to be a little more fragile at this point on the calendar. But here is the unsung part of the offseason that doesn't get touted enough, and I'm going to continue to do it on whatever shows that I'm on. We went from like March 15th or 16th thinking Danielle Hunter is gone. Well, before that, they signed Jonathan Grenard, Andrew Van Ginkel. Then, by the way, they drafted Dallas Turner. They also still have Patrick Jones on the roster. They signed Jihad Ward. Andre Carter was last year's UDFA guy. And then this year's UDFA guy is Gabriel Murphy. That's like 7 humans that have a case to play on Sundays and or to make the active roster. So for the first time in about a decade, for the first time since Danielle Hunter started to get good, whenever your perception of that is, probably 2015, the Vikings have a lot of edge rushing depth. So I would love for Van Ginkel for this thing just to be a nothing burger, and then by the preseason, we're like, yeah, remember when we were paranoid that he wasn't going to play? But if he has to miss time, for once, the Vikings have a lot of options at edge rusher. It's not just Danielle Hunter and then somebody else like DJ Wanham, and then you're down to Nubbins. It's a lot of guys that you can plug and play, and it's so much so that I think there's going to be some awkward roster cuts because you can't keep 7 edge rushers, I don't think. So that means either Patrick Jones got to go, Andre Carter's got to go to the practice squad, Jihad Ward was a really quick one and done or like 0.02 and done. There's a lot of edge rushers on this team, and that's a good problem to have.
You think that crowded room would kind of affect a decision on maybe like putting him on the PUP list, Van Ginkel, even though maybe he's probably looking at 3, let's say he was looking at 2, 3, 4 weeks, but maybe they'd edge towards putting him on the PUP list just to get that roster spot, even though it would mean Van Ginkel would be out at a guaranteed theoretical 6 weeks, just to kind of prolong that awkward decision on who to get rid of and who you get to keep.
Yeah, I see that as a viable option. I'm not willing to predict it as outcome yet because a Liz Frank injury and Hawkinson's torn ACL are 2 different items. Like, I understand why Hawkinson won't be back right away. The Liz Frank thing usually takes a little less, so I'm not really that pessimistic. But in defense of what you just stated, the Vikings under this regime now have a documented track record of being very cautious with injuries. I don't know if you remember, was it 2021 when Adam Thielen got hurt and then he came back for a game and it was very evident that he shouldn't be playing. And I don't know how the trainers cleared him. We don't have that shit anymore. We have the other end of the spectrum where it takes Justin Jefferson 7 weeks to recover from something that sounded like he was good to go after about a month. They're ultra cautious. So in that vein, I can see, yeah, you might as well throw him on the PUP because we already got Jihad Ward, we got Gabriel Murphy. That can work. But I don't think it's that dire. I don't think Kwesi Adofo-Mensah in back-to-back off seasons would make the same mistake twice by getting into bed with a guy with injury. I mean, Van Ginkel doesn't have like a long injury history. It's just this one with the Dolphins. So yeah, the PUP list is in play, but it's not quite as ironclad as we think Hawkinson is.
All right. Well, we'll hold that to you. Hold you to that.
Yeah, I'll do some homework before next month. I'll talk to a couple of my people and see what they say.
Sounds good.
I got a quick interjection here because you wrote another article while we're just kind of just riffing off of all the things you've written and published today.
Yeah.
You wrote another article about Aaron Jones possibly being this bust potential. Who's more likely to be in that category? Are we looking, in a couple of months down the road from now, Van Ginkel or Aaron Jones? Who's more likely to end up in that category, do you think, at this point?
Let's see. Van Ginkel, I think, just turned 29 like yesterday. I think it was his birthday yesterday. So in edge rushers, or maybe it's 28. I have to look it up real quick. In edge rusher speak, that isn't very old. So you can't quite assign these 29. Yep. You can't quite assign the injury or the age-related fears to Van Ginkel. That article you mentioned, Dave Ricard from CBS Sports did an article on fantasy busts, and Aaron Jones made the cut because something we don't talk about very often in Vikingsville is Aaron Jones's first part of the season, almost like first 2/3 sucked for the Packers last year. We're talking like Alexander Madison level of rushing outputs. Now, Packers fans probably don't care now, but they would have told you last year, well, he's been hurt. Wait till he gets healthy. Bada bing. He has 5 wonderful games to help them get to the postseason and then beat the Cowboys in the playoffs. If I had to guess a bust, first of all, I don't think either one of them are there's got to be one. But I would say I would agree with Dave Ricard at CBS Sports because Aaron Jones, right now we're in the honeymoon with him where all we think about is how good he looked in December and January. But all running backs get hurt, even ones that are like 21, and Jones is 29. So more likely to be a bust would be Aaron Jones because running backs simply get hurt more frequently. Even when they're having a great year and they're durable guys, they're going to miss a little time. Mm-hmm. And then I just don't have a lot of fear about Andrew Van Ginkel for the long term. We just have kind of bulked him together with TJ Hawkinson and said, oh God, they're going to have the 2 long-haired white guys are going to miss the start of the season. I don't think that is a necessary fear. But if I had to choose, I would say it's more likely that Aaron Jones gets hobbled sometime early in the season, and then we'd really get an audition to see if Ty Chandler can carry the RB1 load.
Yeah. To me, Aaron Jones, anything at all that he does good for the Vikings is just icing on the cake. I'm not a huge believer in thinking he's going to be this big contributor for the Vikings. I'm not banking on it. Just for exactly what you just said, he's going to get injured. Mm-hmm. He's going to be a 30-year-old running back at one point in the season, and I think it's just inevitable. He's going to get injured, and 30-year-old running backs, unless your name is Adrian Peterson, don't produce anymore. No. That position is so thankless a lot of times, and it gets beat down every single play, and they can't keep it up for year after year after year. So I always say hashtag don't pay running backs.
Yeah, and that's why I was surprised Kwesi did it.
Yeah, I'm glad he's not a $20 million a year guy. So if he gets 100-yard rushing game, I'll be jumping for joy. Obviously, he's probably going to do more than that, but I'm not expecting a whole ton from him.
Yeah, I would challenge your viewers sometime when they're bored, go look at his game log last year. He didn't get good until Christmas Eve, and then he was unbelievably blazing hot. But if you really think Vikings fans are going to have the patience until Christmas for their running back to get good, you haven't been around too many Vikings fans. So I guess what we'll hope is that his shitty games were just a magical byproduct of being hobbled for the almost whole season, and we'll hope the change of scenery is different. But I am very enthusiastic that he became a defector and he's on the Vikings, and we have like a 2 or 3 pronged solution to finally fix this ground game. But I am not quite like gung-ho like some of the world's on, like, hey, prime Aaron Jones is going to tear it up. That would be sweet, but I'm not banking on it.
Yeah.
He did look really good in that purple sombrero, though.
Yeah, I'm still trying to get over that. The first time he took his hat off, I couldn't believe that he had cornrows that started like back here. I was like, what's going on here? Why can't he just do what I did and give it up? But yeah, that's his jam. It looks really sweet coming out of the helmet. But yeah, when I first saw him take off his hat to put on the sombrero, I was like, well, what happened there? No, he just got a unique hairstyle.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I'm rooting for him.
Yeah, me too.
I'm not expecting a whole ton. Maybe that's my Vikings fan condition coming out in me. Like, I'm just already expecting the worst, so you can't hurt me because I'm already hurting myself. So go Aaron Jones, go off, have a day, have a career with the Vikings, but I can't put my heart into that. I can't believe it. So all right. Well, Evan and I, we've been going through the last few weeks, a little off-season series. I've said it a few times. This off-season is going great so far because we haven't had somebody get arrested. We haven't had anybody, like the Chiefs defensive tackle that got arrested twice within a few weeks, and then they've ended up cutting him. This is a good time to have no headlines for your favorite football team because nothing bad's happening. So because of that, we're kind of scrounging for topics to have on a weekly basis. So we've been going through listing out each jersey number. About what have we done? About 20 per episode, and kind of listing the best players in Vikings history to have worn that jersey number. So this episode right now, we are going through numbers 60 through 79. So those elite offensive linemen, sprinkling a few defensive tackles in there too. But Dustin, I'm interested in that group of numbers, those 20 numbers. What are a few guys that kind of jump out to you as like, oh yeah, he was one of the best Vikings of all time. Obviously the best one to wear whatever number. So not every number. Yeah, we're doing that separately, but who jumps out at you?
Yeah, I put some homework into this. The first one, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that belongs on this list with no debates is Randall McDaniel at number 64. It's funny, I have a Randall McDaniel jersey, and I was wearing it for something, and one of my coworkers at Vikings territory saw me in a picture, and he's like, "You wearing a Blake Brandel jersey?" And I'm like, no. And this was last year before anything about Brandel was cool.
Oh, man.
Yeah, but no, Randall McDaniel, if you're going to do one of those Vikings Mount Rushmores, it's really hard to leave him off of it. And I think the only reason that he isn't basically named the greatest Viking of all time is because he plays guard. And, his job is just to do this for 3 hours every Sunday. But Randall McDaniel has more Pro Bowls than any Viking in Vikings history. That's 11 of them, and he has more All-Pros than any Viking in Viking history. And so if you want to base it off of longevity, health, performance, consistency, if you can get over the fact that he was just a guard, Randall McDaniel is probably the best Viking of all time if you want to compare resumes. So he for sure gets the nod in this spot. Ron Yari, he was number 73. He had 7 straight Pro Bowls. So at the peak of his powers, he for sure would get the nod here. And then there was a linebacker named Roy Winston. He was number 60. He was kind of like Chad Greenway of his day. He never had the accolades that would get him to the Hall of Fame or to consistently get Pro Bowls. But those 3 guys would make my all-time list between 60 and 79. I can't go without saying Jared Allen at number 69. He would probably be, if we were doing a show of the top 3 guys with this jersey range, Jared Allen would have to be in that 3. So that's obvious for me. Gary Zimmerman, he was coming up when I was young. He made 3 Pro Bowls, and he was number 65, another guard. And then my guy, Bryant McKinney, 1 Pro Bowl. He wore number 74. And somehow, with all these guys I'm naming off, I got different jersey numbers. So McKinney famously solidified the left side of the line for a decade before he went to go win a Super Bowl with the Ravens. He would be up there, and I don't know that there's another better 74 than him. And then I wanted to do honorable mention on the current team with Christian Darrisaw at 71 and Brian O'Neill at 75. So the topic or the number range you guys assigned me was basically a bunch of offensive linemen plus Winston and Jared Allen. But yeah, it's a real cool subject.
Yeah, and go figure, it didn't occur to me until you said it. You actually have a working relationship with number 74 too. So that's
Oh yeah. Brian and I have been doing the Believe in Vikings show now for 4 years. Yeah. And sometimes I look back on that, I remember how new I was when that came together. And now I just consider him somebody that I would text to say, "Hey, what's going on, buddy?" That's how far that's come. But yeah, he's a wonderful dude, and yeah, he'd have to be on there at number 74.
Yeah, that's super cool. I've never heard like about him personally, like being a dude. I've never heard a bad thing about Brian McKinney.
No,
Yeah, he seems like one of the coolest former Vikings of all time.
Well, he has so many friends. It's weird because I can say, hey, like just name drop somebody on accident, and he'll be like, oh yeah, I knew of him. There was one time where, what was it? Oh, okay. So I don't know if you know this, but Brian McKinney is friends with Serena Williams and Venus Williams. Yeah, they're like lifelong friends from some type of connection. And a couple of years ago, Bryant was doing the NFL choir on America's Got Talent. And it was like a men's choir. And they actually got pretty far in that little tournament. And we were talking on the show about, what are your chances of winning? And I said, top of my head, I was like, you should have Serena Williams retweet the America's Got Talent thing. And I was like, wait a second. I was like, I bet she knows LeBron. You should have LeBron retweet it. And he laughed and he goes, oh, I know LeBron. And I was like, oh yeah, of course you do. And I was trying to like find him a degree of separation to LeBron. He's like, no, I played in Miami, man. I know LeBron. So yeah, that's one of my mini Bryant McKinney stories.
I think one of my favorite is, I think you even said it the first time you were on the Skol Hop. You were talking about Bryant McKinney and that you mentioned something about Randy Moss. I'm like, oh, it'd be kind of cool to have Randy Moss or talk to him.
They started texting him.
And he's like, yeah, he'll be on next week. Like,
yeah. And that like, I didn't know the full heft of McKinney's power at the time. I was still new and just kind of like be on my best behavior. And yeah, I was like, offhandedly, I was like, God, that'd be sweet to have him on the show sometime. And I don't think he said anything in that specific moment, but he started texting. And it would almost be like me and you messaging where like, I was like, hey, can you want to come on my show? And that's how he and Moss were. And yeah, it lined up within 2 weeks. And same thing with Adrian Peterson. I think Culpepper is going to come on this summer. He just knows all those guys. And this isn't limited to the Vikings. I mean, he knows everybody from the University of Miami. He knows all the players from the Ravens because of the Ravens days. Yeah, it's really cool.
Well, I always have fun just living vicariously through you and get to talk to all these people. That's awesome. Last thing that kind of popped into my mind here really quick. As we've been doing this series, Evan and I have noticed there's a few numbers that it's like, hey, if you're an up-and-coming Viking and you really want to make your mark and maybe you don't care as much about what number you have, you just want to own a number. If you want to, like, if you get like 2 Pro Bowls, you'll automatically be the best at that number of all time.
Yeah.
Vikings. Can you think of any in that 60 to 79 group that somebody could really come in and own it? And we won't hold you to this because there's a chance you could say like, oh, this number, and it's like, oh, somebody from the 70s went to
let's see. Yeah, this is probably the most challenging one to do this because who the hell knows what guards number were in the 90s? Probably, let's see. Probably 72. I don't know if there is a big name. I'm gonna hate this if you guys find like, oh yeah, this guy at 72. I would say, yeah, probably 72, and then, ooh man, maybe 68. Who had that? Anthony Herrera or somebody?
Oh yeah,
or 60. 67's Ed Ingram. That keeps standing out in my head. No, 60. Yeah, I'm going to say 72. Look that one up. I want to say a lot of the 70s are taken because of decent offensive tackles. And then 68's standing out to me, but I don't know if that's for a good reason. So I'm going to bank my reputation on 72.
Evan, did you look it up, or are we going to have to go back and ask our stat guy if that was a good selection?
So 72, just some names that stand out to me. Ezra Cleveland had that for the 3 years that he was with the Vikings. And James White, he was prominent in the late 70s, early 80s.
Oh, I think I'm doing all right.
Other than that, yeah, 72 is pretty good. What was the other one, 68?
Yeah, but as I said that, I started to have like things flashed for my eyes, but it was just like jersey numbers of 68. Yeah, that one I'm a little spooked that I might have been forgetting somebody ginormous.
Nothing notable that stands out to me at 68 either.
Good.
So.
Okay.
All right. So there you go. 2 numbers that if you're an up-and-coming Viking, either an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman, I think those are about the only groups that can fully wear those numbers. Maybe linebackers in the 60s. I don't know. If you're an up-and-coming Viking and you really want to own a number, just get a couple of Pro Bowls and wear 72 or 68, and you'll be good as gold there.
I almost wasn't there one summer where Everson Griffin came back and he was like 50 something. We all freaked out.
Michael Pierce had come in as a free agent. He snagged 97, but then it was the 2020 year, and Michael Pierce sat out.
Oh yeah.
And then 2021, Griffin came back, and Pierce technically still held 97, but he just gave that up.
Yeah, what was he? What was Griffin? It was a 50 something. Was it like?
It was something like that for like a practice, a very short.
No, it was a game. I remember seeing it in a game. Yeah, I remember tweeting about it. That's why. So it was something. He came back and it was like 50. I want to say it was a 50 because I thought it looked kind of cool, but most of Twitter was like, "Oh, I can't stand seeing this." I want to say it was like 54 or something.
That might have been because Eric Kendricks probably would have been on the team at that point too.
Yeah, it was when he came back. You remember when he went and played for the Cowboys?
A couple of times, right? There's a season he started with the Cowboys and then bounced to the Lions. Maybe only came.
Yeah, he only came back the once, and I think it was that time. And maybe that's why it stands out because it was actually in a game. I'll find it after the show, but it was definitely in the 50s, and it felt weird.
Yeah, doing this series, the numbers are such a kind of goofy thing because ultimately it doesn't matter. It's just what the guys do on the field. But for fans, it's like what we see. We know 19 is cool because of Thielen. We know Dante Culpepper will always be number 11 for the Vikings for me. So it is fun to think about, like, who wore this number? Pete Bursich, we found out, wore number 50 for 1 year. After playing for the Vikings, leaving, then coming back. So, yeah, it's interesting to look at these numbers.
58. I tweeted on August 22nd or August 27th, 2021. I happen to like Griffin in number 58. So in a preseason game, he was 58.
Well, the Skol Hop account, we'll go back. We'll find that tweet of yours. We'll retweet it. So,
so I hereby nominate Everson Griffin as number 58. Pretty cool in this section of the episode.
There you go. All right, Evan, you got anything else before we wrap it up?
No, I would add one more number, and I'm sure we'll talk about this when we go through the full list, but 77, Corey Stringer.
Absolutely.
I have a news article here that my parents clipped out of the Star Tribune. It's Randy Moss with his head like this. It's a pretty powerful moment for me as a young kid to see a player that you kind of idolize pass away from something as tragic like that. So I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention him at that number. Pretty prominent memory for me in my young Viking fanhood.
Absolutely.
Shame on me for forgetting him. When I was a teenager, my first job was bagging groceries in Eden Prairie at a grocery store called Driscoll's, and he used to come in. And and he was just like McKinney, huge. But he was so cool because, I was about 15. I could go up to him because you knew him the moment you saw him. He had the dreads at the time that weren't crazy popular. He was huge, and he always had I don't know if you guys listened to rap back then. There was an album called Ghetto D from Master P, and he always had this huge chain on that was the album cover of Ghetto D. And so you could go up to him and just start talking to him like you played football. You could be like, ask about the team, and he'd talk right along with you. And so we're talking like 1998, 1999 is when I got to meet him. Yeah, and he was a really cool guy. So, hell yeah, you got to make sure he's included in this pantheon.
Yeah, that's super cool. And he might be the most recent retired number. I might be wrong on that, but they, fittingly retired his number pretty soon after all that went down. But, yeah. All right, Dustin. Once again, thank you so much for coming on. We'd have you on every episode if you wanted to. But we love having you on. It's always fun. But I always like to give you a chance to talk about what you're doing, give you some plug time. So what can we look out for you as far as Dustin Baker content?
Sure. It is at Vikings territory, the show that you guys talked about ad nauseum here, which was awesome. And then our sister site is Purple PTSD. Recently, my good friend Yannick Eckhart took over as the editor there, and things have been going great for him. Vikes Now, we record during the slow season about every other day, 4 or 5 episodes a week. And that's the major stuff. And then on Twitter, it's Dustin Baker. And then things from that account will really start to heat up when we have meaningful stuff happening, which is about less than 3 weeks away. And why don't you gentlemen, if you think of it, schedule me for like August 6th or so. I think that would be an apropos time. I have one more vacation to take this summer, but that isn't until 2 days after that.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll plan on it. We'll get all the details nailed down for that.
Outstanding. And then I'm pretty sure Cam Akers is on the way back to the team, by the way. That's more than just Charlie Walters' article. That sounds like that one is imminent. So
yeah,
Vikings will get even deeper at running back.
Yeah, I saw Vikings territory something come out. I don't know if it was Twitter or just on the website, but it had sources right there.
Yeah, yeah, I went and made sure that wasn't just something that had accidentally proliferated the internet. No, that one is imminent, and it makes all the sense in the world for them to have one more guy there, especially because they just don't use Kane and Wangu on offense.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that'll be cool. I'm excited for that.
Yep.
All right. Hey, welcome back. You made it through the interview. And I say that like it's a bad thing, but it's never a bad thing to have a conversation with Dustin Baker. We always enjoy it.
I would talk to him kind of like you. Like, there are some people that I would just sit down and just hang out all day and talk about the Vikings, and that's literally what this podcast started off with. Dustin's another guy. He knows a lot, but he doesn't come off as arrogant. And it's fun to talk with them about the Vikings. So I hope you guys enjoyed that as much as we did. That's kind of turned into, and I'm very happy about it, like a monthly segment for him to come on. I think I tell him we'd have him on every episode, but anytime he wants to come on, he's welcome to. And Dustin, I love this monthly thing that we've got going on. So yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely been fun. It was fun to kind of pick his brain on some things. We've got the Olympics coming up, so we kind of asked him, like, well, if football were a thing and flag football could become a thing in the near future, who would the Viking Olympians be? Mm-hmm. I got to ask him an interesting question about Aaron Jones versus Van Ginkel, 2 new Vikings acquisitions in the offseason, and which one is more likely to be a bust kind of coming up. So,
and on that note too, I think I was a little hard on Aaron Jones. I want him to be a 2,000-yard rusher. I want him to be healthy all year, and I'm be the first one to jump up for joy in his first touchdown with the Vikings and all 20 of them that I hope he gets. But I just realistically, I don't see that happening. But I'm an Aaron Jones fan. I'm a Vikings fan. He's a Viking. So
I'll be one of the first to buy a purple sombrero for sure.
Well, I saw sombreros in Mexico. I didn't see any purple ones though. I didn't look too hard. I probably should have looked hard enough.
And it was fun to kind of piggyback off of our series that we've been doing too, and just kind of ask Dustin who stands out to him in that 60 to 79 range as well. So it was a good conversation, as it always is. And we're always grateful and always excited to hang out with him for just a little bit. And fun that it's become a monthly thing.
Yeah, I had totally forgotten that Everson Griffin had worn number 58 for the Vikings. So that was fun for him to bring that up. And
I forgot about that too. But
I told him I'd retweet it, but I didn't at the time. So we'll do that. We'll do that soon.
All right. Well, what are your thoughts on the Flying Johnny from NoCoast Brewing out of Oskaloosa?
So this, it's got the hoppiness of an IPA in a good way. So if you don't like IPAs, maybe this wouldn't be your favorite. But for me, I love the hoppiness. It's also not a blasting in your face hoppiness flavor. It's like the perfect amount. It's like just right. And it's got a full flavor. Reminds me of an amber a little bit.
Got that color for sure.
So in a really good way, if you ever had the Arms Race from Big Grove, this one kind of reminds me a little bit of that.
Yeah,
they're different
for sure.
beers, but they could be like cousin beers. You know, they're close enough that they remind me of each other.
Well, and I likened it to a Fat Tire too.
Yeah, true. With a full body flavor, but nothing about it is too in your face. So like you don't have to need extreme flavors either way to like this beer. It's really good. I like it a lot.
Yeah. I think I like it a little more than you do.
Maybe,
you got to catch up here.
Well, I
Come
did.
on, man.
We both poured a couple here, so. But yeah, the can's really fun. It kind of gives me the feel that maybe it's a limited run just for the 4th of July, which would make me a little sad because I want to have this beer more often. Like this would enter my repertoire of regular beers. Can's really cool, but it very much screams 4th of July, which is awesome. I just hope it's not a limited run.
I hope not to. It was a good beer, and everything that you said about it, I would second that. And yeah, I'm gonna go back to our Devil's Glen Hy-Vee, and I'm gonna look for this on the shelf, and I might buy another one.
Yeah.
Just to have.
How far is Oskaloosa? That's where NoCoast is.
It's
is located.
south of I-80.
Okay.
And I think it's kind of like between here and Des Moines, but south of I-80.
Is it on our list? Is it a little too far off?
It is not on our list currently, but hey, NoCoast, we're headed down I-80 towards Des Moines from the Quad Cities to Des Moines next week.
Yeah.
So if you want us to make a little pit stop out to Oskaloosa, you just let us know.
Yeah.
We'd be happy to go. We will go out of our way to go to Oskaloosa.
This beer solidifies it. I will
sure.
second that. We've had the Make Waves. We've had the Van Gogh. I think the Van Gogh is the first NoCoast beer we had.
I think you're right. Yeah.
We've had they were the ones that made those 3 nitro beers that we had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've actually had quite a bit of NoCoast. I
NoCoast,
forgot
we're
about
fans.
those. I forgot about those nitro beers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they might be the most featured beer on the podcast.
They might be. We'll double check.
We'll go back and count.
Yeah, but this one's great. Again, this one's the Flying Johnny from NoCoast. Try it out if you haven't. Try to find it if you can't. We're a bit of ways from NoCoast, and we still could find it locally. So I'm really glad. I will have this again happily. Thank you for bringing it.
Yeah, you bet. All right, man. Well, good episode.
Yeah, best episode yet.
Skol. Hey Vikings fans, Evan here from the Skol Hop, and we just wanted to say thank you again so much for listening to the Skol Hop, and we also wanted to take one more opportunity to let you know that this episode of the Skol Hop has been brought to you by Big Top Ventures. If you're considering taking an all-inclusive trip to either Mexico or Jamaica, reach out to our friends at Big Top Ventures at bigtopventuresllc@gmail.com. Once again, that's bigtopventuresllc@gmail.com. You can get the lowest rate possible on several all-inclusive resorts throughout the region. Big Top Ventures. Step right up to your next big adventure. And thanks again for listening to the Skol Hop. Skol.